Greetings from an undisclosed location in the Orion arm of the Milky Way, transmitting from deep inside the Virgo supercluster. This is the Podcast of Mystery, and I am your host, Jason Rigdon. Thank you so much for listening. I've got a really great episode for you this time. I'll be talking to Lisa from Cryptid Comforts. She makes these absolutely adorable little stuffed animals of Bigfoot, Mothman, and my absolute favorite, the Hopkinsville Goblin. Check out her wonderful handmade plushies at cryptidcomforts.com. I'll also be talking to Matthew Hines of the Encounters USA podcast. We'll be talking about his show, a strange UFO sighting in the Middle East, and his incredible experience at the UFO hotspot that is Skinwalker Ranch in Trout Lake, Washington. But first, I need to talk to you about money. This is the very last episode of my 5-episode launch pack. So far, we've talked to you folks about psychedelic plants, demonic possessions, alien art, and I watched an indie horror movie with a celebrity. I talked to a psychic medium, a birdman, and a couple of podcasters. I've had a lot of fun doing these episodes and talking with these really remarkable people. I hope you've enjoyed listening. I hope you want more. But what I really hope is that you might give me some money. You see, these 5 episodes are kind of a test. You see, I need a job. I need money. And I think I'm good at this whole podcasting thing, maybe. What I like to do is to make the Podcast of Mystery my full-time job. You can help me with this by supporting the show on Patreon at patreon.com/podofmystery or by visiting podcastofmystery.com/support. By joining my Patreon for $5 a month, you'll be showing that you value this podcast and you want to hear more. You'll also get exclusive access to the Podcast of Mystery Discord server and access to our upcoming premium episodes. But most importantly, you'll be helping make this crazy show my full-time job. All I need is for one person to believe in this show enough to give $5 a month, and I'll immediately start working on new episodes. If I can get 10 of you to become patrons, I'll release a new episode each week. And if I somehow get 100 people to sign up for my Patreon, I will start doing the show twice a week. So please help me out and show your support for this podcast, the Podcast of Mystery. Show your support by visiting patreon.com/podofmystery right now.
I'm Lisa Russell, and I run a company called Cryptid Comforts. And what I do is I create handcrafted stuffed toys, mostly, that are all cryptozoology, monster, horror themed. And then from the stuffed toys, I also take photos of my stuffies and I turn that into graphic designs, which I then use for patches and buttons and keychains and things like that. So I have a whole big line of products that are all cryptozoology themed.
Yeah, could you tell us like some of the creatures you've included in, I guess, maybe your line?
Oh, God, I've increased it so much this year, too. So when I first started out, I started, of course, with Bigfoot was my first, and then Mothman, then the Yeti, which I've actually kind of stopped doing the Yeti. I might bring him back, though. I got Dover Demon now, Mongolian death worms, aliens. I just started doing the Van Meter Visitor this past week. I do the Loveland Frogman, which is a fairly new one. I've got Chupacabras. Let's see, what else? What am I missing? Hopkinsville Goblins, Loch Ness Monsters, Bat Squatch, Sheep Squatch, Jersey Devil, Cthulhu's and Krakens and Flatwoods Monster. And what else? Oh, and the Fresno Nightwalker. Yeah.
So quite the variety. And some of these are kind of the deep cuts of the cryptozoological world.
Oh, yeah. And the Pascagoula alien. Yeah. Yeah, I've expanded my line significantly with COVID year. Not getting to go on my tour and travel. I've just been making crazy amounts of new product.
And you seem to be, very, very interested in, cryptozoology, it seems.
Oh, yeah. Where
did that come from? How did that start?
Well, so I've always, had a little interest in weird stuff, but really all of this started, my cryptid research all started a few years back. I was working at a school in Portland when I lived there, Portland Jewish Academy, and I was teaching some summer discovery classes, and we get to create our own curriculum for our classes. And I was coming up with ideas for curriculum. And one of my friends said one day that I should do a class because I'm a unicorn girl. I love unicorns. And she said I should do a class called Unicorns, Unicorns, Unicorns. I was like, well, I don't know about a class just about unicorns. So I was like, let's do unicorns, dragons, and Bigfoots and talk about, at the time I was thinking, talk about mythological creatures and their origin and why they're so popular in modern culture, even though we have no proof of their existence. And as I started delving into research, the class actually became a cryptozoology class for kids. And we talk about all kinds of weird stuff in class. So it's not just those things, but I do tell them, the origin of the unicorn, my theories on the origin of the dragon, my theories, on all of these things. But then one year I even got a guy who had a Bigfoot experience come in and tell his story to the kids. And we make art projects based around the cryptids. I've had the kids make Mothman stuffies and make Fresno Nightwalkers. And we, do all kinds of fun, crafty things that, we talk about the cryptid, the first part of class, and then we work on an art project that's based on those cryptids. So, and then I expanded and did another class just on sea monsters and, water cryptids, because there's so many of them. They have their own class. So I just really enjoyed the subject matter. And the more I researched, the more I got into it. And that first year that I did the class also aligned with the first Oregon Bigfoot Festival. And so I went to the Oregon Bigfoot Festival. I was like, oh, I'll be a vendor at that. And I'm making all these, prototype projects for my class. I can just sell those there. And I was already making stuffed animals, but not cryptid ones. So I did make some Bigfoot stuffies for that. And then I just got more into the cryptid stuff and stopped making everything else.
And had you been doing like these little, what would you call them? Like would it be appropriate to call them stuffed animals, or what would you call them, plushies?
I call them stuffies, but a lot of people use the term plushies. Plushies, stuffies.
Stuffies, okay.
Stuffed toys, yeah.
Plushies, okay. And was this your first attempt to make these little guys, or had you made other kind of similar products?
Well, I guess it's been almost 12 years ago, I started. Well, I had never sewn anything in my life, and one morning I woke up and my boyfriend's like, "What are you going to do today?" I was like, "I'm going to make a sock monkey." He's like, "Do you know how to do that?" I was like, "No." It's like, "Then how are you going to do it?" I was like, "Google." And so he went off to work, and I spent my entire day making a sock monkey by hand. And I still have that sock monkey that I first made, and it's ridiculous. It's terrible, but cute in its own unique way. But I really had fun, and I started making more. And then he got me a sewing machine that year for Christmas, since I showed interest in it. And I've been using that sewing machine ever since. And of course, now that sewing machine is pretty worn out. But yeah, so I started off making sock animals, and then slowly, like sock monkeys. And then I got into sock pigs, sock bears, and, all the sock stuff, and sock owls. And then I transitioned into regular fabric, but a little bit here and there. And then once I started doing cryptids, I went full fleece.
Do you know how many are in your line of cryptids?
I feel like right now there's probably about 16 or 17. I haven't counted them all up in a little while, and I keep adding more, but I think that's about what I got right now. Maybe more.
Yeah. Do you have any particular favorites?
Always. But they always change. It kind of depends on what I'm working on and what I'm interested in at the moment. But lately I've been on a Grafton monster kick. Oh, I forgot to mention that in the big list I gave you earlier. The Grafton monster, of course. My favorite. He's so fluffy. So yeah, that's kind of I've been loving that one. I kind of have a love-hate relationship right now with the Jersey Devil, because they turn out so cute, but they're so hard to make. So, but I enjoy the Jersey Devil because he's a unique one. And yeah, just kind of depends on what I'm working on at the time. And, where my interests are going. But the Grafton monster, I think, is my cutest. And so that makes me happy.
And are they all still like handmade?
Yeah.
And are you the one?
I hand make everything.
And you make them all?
I do. And not only do I make them all, I don't use patterns. So each one is hand drawn. So like I lay the fabric out and I'll actually draw on the fabric and then cut it out and do it. So no two are ever going to be identical.
Wow. That is amazing. That is really, really remarkable. Like, and you said you like not that long ago, you hadn't ever done anything like this before.
No, I had never sewn until about 11 or 12 years ago. Yeah.
And did you just learn through Google, like you said, or did you eventually find some books that like kind of really helped you? Or?
Oh, no, I still have no idea what I'm doing. I just, no, I learned by doing. But if I were to talk to, somebody who knows all the terminology and stuff, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like somebody said something to me about, different feet for the sewing machine. And I was like, why do I have other feet? Like, I don't know. I only use the one that came on it. Am I supposed to be changing those? I'm like, I don't. So, and then my mother explained to me that the zipper foot for putting on zippers, I was like, oh, I've tried doing zippers and I always thought it was really frustrating. Maybe if I tried that. So yeah, I don't know what I'm doing at all, but I've gotten pretty good at it somehow.
They look absolutely wonderful. And it's not just,
thank you.
You also have, I believe, the t-shirts and stuff. I was just looking at the website. It's not just the little dudes.
Yeah. So, but everything that I make it starts as a stuffed animal and then I do the design work from that. So yeah, the t-shirts and stuff you can order through like Threadless and whatever those other ones are, TeePublic. And so you can get any of my t-shirt designs. And then, but other stuff that I have, like I have enamel pins and bottle opener keychains, acrylic keychains, and things like that are all my design.
And where should people go if they want to find your stuff right now while we're talking?
Cryptidcomforts.com is my website, my store that has everything. I also have an Etsy page, Etsy, /shop, _Cryptid Comforts shop or something like that. Yeah. But if you also go on my Instagram, which is cryptid _ comforts, that has my linked in profile or my link tree, that's what it's called, where it lists all my websites. So
I'll make sure I have that all in the show notes.
Cool.
So when you're designing a new one, does it start off as like a drawing or do you just start with the fabric? Yeah,
it starts off as a sketch. Like I'll sketch it out a few times, and it doesn't mean that that's what I end up doing when I actually go to sew. But I do a few sketches usually while I'm at work at my coffee shop job. I'm bored and I'll have an idea and I'm like, oh, I'm going to sketch that out. So I look at photos photos, which are, sketches that people have done of eyewitness accounts and things like that. So I Google it, I look at those, and then I kind of come up with what I think it should look like in my head. And then I start sketching out how to build it. And so some of them are very easy. Some of it's just two pieces of fabric sewn together, easy peasy. Others get really complicated, like the Jersey Devil, which has so many parts, so many. So some of them are really hard and others are really, really, really simple. So I just kind of learn as I go. And sometimes I changed my Flatwoods monster. I wasn't super happy with her to begin with. I made a bunch and then I sold them on my tour. And then I was like, I can do better. I can make her better. And so then I totally changed the way I was doing it. I'm much happier with it now. And I've done that with a few things. My Mongolian deathworm, I recently changed how I do him too. So, and as now I do embroidery also. So I'm getting into doing embroidered eyes and things like that to add on. So I think that's also changed the aesthetic of a lot of them.
And I have to ask, because, this is the podcast of mystery. Have you had any experiences with the paranormal or cryptids or anything like this?
Well, okay. So as a kid, I had some ghost encounter sort of stuff, maybe, but some creepy occurrences when I was little. I think we lived in a haunted house. My parents didn't think so, but that's a whole weird thing. But I've never actually gotten to have a cryptid experience. Although, yeah, I could have sworn I saw a river monster once, but it was probably not because, those things get really misidentified because there's lots of weird things in the water and it could have been anything. But it's so funny. I was telling my students one day, we were talking about, how I like to sit on the Columbia River looking for river monsters because I was staying at a house at the time that overlooked the Columbia River. So I just sit out on the back deck and, look for river monsters. And I was telling them, I was like, yeah, and I saw one and it was amazing. And then I was like, ooh, river monster. And then I was like, oh no, that was a bunch of ducks. And then I go, ooh, river monster. Well, I think that's an otter. Just kind of. And I love teaching those classes because the kids, I tell them all this goofy stuff that I do all the time. But I also, when I get into, the real detailed stories about creepy weirdness, and inevitably there'll be a kid at the end that's like, Miss Lisa, is that true? And I'll be like, well, everything I tell you in this class may or may not be true. And I think that confuses the kids and delights them. They're like, wait, what? I'm like, everything I'm teaching you here may or may not be true. That's the beautiful thing about cryptozoology.
So do you just sell them online, or do you do like maybe like street fairs or anything like that, or any little stores?
Oh, well. So in a normal year, when there's, not a pandemic going around, I do all kinds of festivals. So I really started touring in 2019. So I had a whole tour lined up for this past year too that got canceled, of course. But that's when I kind of started doing like hardcore traveling for events. And so I planned a Southern tour. So I went out south for a few months and did a bunch of events out there, some Bigfoot events, Mothman Festival, things like that. And this year I had lined up, or last year, I guess now it's 2021 already.
Time is so weird right now.
Yeah. But so I had all this stuff scheduled for 2021. And of course, only got to do 2 events before the whole world shut down for the year. So I had more events scheduled for that year than ever before. But yeah, once things get back to normal, I'll be back on tour. I plan on, traveling for like 2 or 3 months. And I have family in Tennessee still. So I use that as my home base. And then I take, trips, and sometimes my sister goes with me, sometimes my mom, friends. So it's a lot of fun. I did an event in Florida last year in February, right before the country shut down, and have a friend who lives out there. So, I mean, some of those trips though, that one, like, I didn't go with the intention of actually making money because, travel expenses. But I mean, an event like Mothman Festival, my travel expenses get covered pretty quickly because that is the event to be at. So, yeah, I like to do all kinds of events. We have quite a few Bigfoot events, as you may know, out here. Sasquatch Summit and UFO festivals, the UFO Summit. Yeah, so lots of fun events, and the Oregon Bigfoot Festival, and there's the International Bigfoot Festival in Kennewick that I got to do in 2018, and then he canceled 2019, and of course 2020. So.
And when you're going to these, conventions, how do people react to these wonderful little guys?
Usually very happy. People tend to give me a lot of positive feedback. I do, of course, get some strange people sometimes at these events too. And I had one guy who picked up like one of my little clay good luck mini Bigfoots, and he looks at it, he goes, "That's not really what Bigfoot looks like." And I was like, oh, weird, because I was going for complete accuracy, obviously, in my little cartoon toy. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, I don't even know how to respond to that. I'm like, okay. Like, But yeah, most people think what I'm doing is cute, and they seem to like it. And yeah, I get a lot of people who are pleasantly surprised by cute cryptid stuffies. So.
And do you have like a list in your head of creatures you'd like to do, or is it more just like when the inspiration comes?
Well, so there's there's always people suggesting things to me. And I put that out on my Instagram a lot. I'm like asking people to constantly be like, hey, what do you want to see? What do you want me to make? And so people have given me some really obscure ones that I'm like, I don't think there's really a market for that because no one knows what that is except probably you and like 2 other people. But so other ones, I'm like, that's obscure, but that could be cool. So, I have those, and a lot of it's, the people suggest things, and if I get enough suggestions for it, like the Loveland frog, that was suggested multiple times. So I was like, all right. And my thought was, how do I make this the Loveland frog and not just a frog stuffy? And so, me being goofy, I made a T-shirt to put on my Loveland frog that says, I saw the Loveland frog man and all I got was this lousy T-shirt. So, just being corny, I was like, that's how I'm going to make the Loveland frog man. And that's my sense of humor. So now I do little T-shirts for him. It's just a frog stuffy with a T-shirt on, basically.
They are just absolutely wonderful. And if you're looking for like, a gift or maybe a gift for yourself, for someone, or maybe you're into cryptozoology,
Yeah.
you got to just check them out and look at them. They are just wonderful.
Thank you.
And once again, where should they go if they want to check these guys out? Or these little cryptids?
Cryptidcomforts.com. Cryptidcomforts.com is definitely where everything is. But occasionally I put exclusive stuff up on my Etsy shop, but that's stuff that I'm not planning on continuing to make. If it's only on Etsy, I probably won't continue to make it, probably. I kind of test market things over there before I decide. But then, and it's just easier to load stuff onto Etsy than it is my website. Yeah. But Instagram also, I put everything that I'm working on my Instagram page. So.
And these are handmade by the artist. Like they're.
Yes.
Yeah. So each one is an individual piece of art.
Yes. And it's a solo thing. I mean, I get help occasionally from, people who, like when I had a big order for Cryptid Crate and I had to do, 400 Fresno Nightwalkers. I had my boyfriend's mom was cutting out, squares of fabric for me. I had my friend Brandy making tags and stuff. So, and then, my mom and my sister were trying to be very helpful when I was in town. Like I had already sewed them all, but I left them unstuffed. So we just had to stuff them and stitch them. Yeah, my sister's terrible at stuffing. She'd either make them without hardly any stuffing in them or way too much to where they're solid brick. And I was like, okay, that's not a good job for you. But she's really good at sales and stuff at events. So, everyone has the thing that they can do to be helpful, which is awesome. And the fact that everybody wants to be so helpful. My dad's now involved. He's doing a 3D design for me. He got me a 3D printer to play with, and he's doing the design work so I can print stuff off. Although he's been slacking lately, so got to get on him to get my next design. He was having some issues with the Jersey Devil, but. But yeah, I like that, I'm trying to make it a family affair, get everyone involved. And, my family's been unbelievably supportive through me doing all of this. And I think it was me going on the tour when I did and them actually seeing what I'm doing. Because I think them just hearing what I'm doing, seeing it online, they're like, I don't know why you think that's a job. But when they actually, see how I am at events and are like, oh, okay. So I see this is something that people are into. It's not just you being weird. Oh, okay. And I think it actually took, taking my mom to Cryptid Con with me. And she was like, oh, I didn't know it was like that. I'm like, yeah. So, but yeah, they've been really supportive. My mom got me an embroidery machine. My dad got me a 3D printer. They're like totally on board with backing my business and want to do whatever they can to, which is awesome. And I have so much support, and that means a lot. And I don't have to buy any of my own equipment. Boyfriend buys a sewing machine. My mom gets me the embroidery machine. Really taking advantage here.
Well, it's worked out well for everyone because like they're
Right?
just so absolutely wonderful. I really love
Thank you.
them. I have to.
Thank you so much.
I will be putting my order in soon. Where should people go to find these wonderful little cryptids?
Cryptidcomforts.com or cryptid_comforts on Instagram.
Thank you so much for your time and for making these wonderful little creations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for wanting to talk to me.
Word of mouth is the absolute number one way that listeners find new podcasts, which is good for me. I don't have a budget for buying ads anywhere. I just have my loyal listeners. So, loyal listeners, would you mind telling everyone you know about the podcast of mystery? I'm sure if you think about it, you know of a few people that would absolutely love this show. Why not share it with them? Send them a text asking if they've heard of the podcast of mystery. Post something about the show or a favorite episode on Facebook or Twitter, or do whatever people do on TikTok. Just please do what you can to help share this show with others. I don't have an advertising budget. There's no media company behind me. It's just me. So please help this show grow by telling your friends about it.
All right. Well, I'm just going to jump on in here then, Jason. First of all, thanks for having me on the podcast of mystery. I was excited by the name of it because I don't know if you know this, but there are the trees of mystery down in Klamath in California.
Oh, really?
That's like a Bigfoot area. So you got to check that out sometime. And when I saw Podcast of Mystery, I thought, well, maybe I'll send him some pictures from my visit. But so let me introduce myself. I'm Matthew Hines. I have a podcast called Encounters USA. Should be fairly evident from the background and the T-shirt. We do have merchandise, obviously. So we do aliens, we do Bigfoot, we do Dogman. And the reason that I started this podcast about almost, I think I'm on 2 years now, is just because there is so much evidence that's coming out now that says, well, not really now, it's been coming out for like 50 years. But Bigfoot seems to be associated with UFOs. And I'm into how, with the Dogman, it's kind of the same phenomenon. It's like, how do they get here? What is their, why can't we find them? And they seem to, a lot of people that I have talked to about this seem to think, and these are very credible people, these are scientists, these are researchers, these are professional people that say, well, yeah, they probably are coming in and out of portals. And there is it's the Pine, I can't remember, the Pine Ridge or something incident in 73 back in Pennsylvania and Indiana that the Close Encounters movie was based upon, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Anyway, in those encounters, there were a lot of UFOs with Bigfoot associated with the UFOs, like right next to them and whatever. And luckily, during my interviews, I talked to Ron Moorhead, who is a famous Bigfoot researcher, and he was featured in David Paulides' Missing 411 about the Bigfoot camp up in the Cascades in California. So Ron saw, or he said that one of the guys he was with, they communicated with these Bigfoot, and it's very famous for their incident in the recording. But one of the guys he was with is a fireman, and he said down the hill he saw a Bigfoot with a UFO. And so these are really credible people. And so I started Encounters USA because I don't think we're just limited to a Bigfoot or a UFO or a Dogman or aliens. Somehow I think that they are all connected. Excuse me. And for a little bit of evidence, think of, Jason, I don't know how old you are. You're probably not as old as I am, but I remember the $6 Million Man. And you remember? And the $6 Million Man in 1975 was doing battle with Bigfoot and aliens. And so during the course of the show, this question keeps coming up. How does George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, how did they get to talk about Bigfoot and aliens? And they don't get ridiculed. But they seem to have all of this information that really seems to be right out of the files of the FBI or whatever. So that's what we do. We do Bigfoot, we do aliens and Dogman, and that's why we are looking for them together.
And maybe, I don't know, what's the difference between Bigfoot and Dogman?
Well, a Dogman, and I had not even heard of a Dogman until like two and a half years ago, right before I started doing the podcast. And it started with a movie or a book called The Beast of Bray Road. And I believe that's either Wisconsin or Michigan. And I'm sorry if I get it wrong, but it is a canine-like creature. It's about 10 feet tall, anywhere between 8 to 10 feet tall, bodybuilder physique, long fingers with claws, and walks on like dog legs. And it has all the features of a dog. And so more interesting facts came out, or not. I don't want to say facts, but more interesting information came out about the Dogman. Like I interviewed a guy who did an investigation outside of Monroe, where somebody reportedly hit a Dogman. We went out there, and I was shown on Highway 9 where this, it's not Highway 9, it's Highway 2, I think, where some woman smashed into a Dogman. It just basically appeared in front of her. She thought she smashed in the front of her car, and they were screaming, and they took off down the road, and they looked at the car. There was no damage to it. And then they, well, where did this thing go and what happened? So I can tell you more, but that's how I got into the Dogman thing, because they seem to be related and they seem to have a tie to Native Americans.
Are they, maybe it's a silly question, but are they any relation to like werewolves? Because almost, when you describe them, it kind of brings up in my mind. Okay. So
not at all. And that's a good question to ask, because one thing that, I mean, we look into a few paranormal things that are associated with these things. And one of the ideas of the Dogman is this what's called a skinwalker. And when you talk about a werewolf, a skinwalker is not necessarily a werewolf. A skinwalker is a Native American entity. It comes from the Southwest, from the Zuni and the Hopi and the Navajo, and they would use these skinwalkers against their enemies. And they would, I don't want to get too far into it because I'm going to be wrong, but the skinwalkers are evil entities. And the natives think that these dogmen are the skinwalkers, have something to do with it. Something that we've just looked at in a recent podcast was I talked to these guys that were down at a place called Skinwalker Ranch. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. That's quite famous.
So, yeah. So, and it is my idea. It is my theory that these dogmen and these Bigfoot are coming out of a portal somewhere down there. And so I had a couple on there. I had a remote viewer. He's the head of the Mount Baldy Institute. He's a PhD out of Wazoo. And I'm also from Wazoo. I just want to throw that in there. In case you're a Husky, Jason, I'll
No.
So, anyway, I had these guys on, and these guys were down there, and they had just, when they went down there, the guy that they were visiting had 3 Bigfoot come up and tear his lights, his motion lights, off of his RV, and they're 12 feet high. And he says they just walked up and tore them out, and then basically disappeared. So where did they come from? My question is, where do they come from? And let me just throw in this thing about WSU. I have a degree in history. I've been teaching for over 20 years, and I have a master's in education. So I'm not I'm probably not your typical UFO person, but what I do on my show is we're not out to prove anything. What we're looking for is facts. We're looking for, like, what are the Bigfoot like? How do they interact socially? And how do we see repeated behaviors across, different accounts? And the same thing with UFOs, aliens, etc. Because when you're talking about aliens, you're not talking about one race. You're talking about many, and some of them have specific attributes. So we've gone Encounters USA. I usually like to say is more of a graduate level paranormal show. So we really like to compile evidence and say, well, that story sounds a lot like this other account. So that's kind of what we do.
And you kind of came on here today to talk about maybe some of your personal experiences in the paranormal.
Right. Now, let me start off by saying that I had never had any kind of paranormal experience. The one I'm going to talk about first is something that happened before I arrived at a certain location. The paranormal experience that I've had was at Cryptids Ranch. And that's where anybody can go there and pretty much have the same experiences. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the first one I'm going to talk about, I just want to preface that until I went to Cryptids Ranch, I had never seen anything that I would classify as a UFO, alien, Bigfoot, whatever. These things just kind of have avoided me, and probably for good reason. But the first one I'm going to talk about happened when I was a paratrooper. I was in the 82nd Airborne, and we were given peacekeeping duty in the Sinai Desert. Now, the Sinai Desert is 10 Commandments, Moses, that place. And it is a very hot, very dry area. And while I was there, we were there for 6 months. And our duty there was to sit in these checkpoints and basically make sure Israel didn't attack Egypt or vice versa. So we were there, and basically kind of as sitting ducks, is if there was a war that was going to break out, they thought, 300 paratroopers is going to make a difference. So we're there. And at one point, they have a competition, and it's like a decathlon competition, but it's with military skills. So I was a pretty fast runner, used to be anyway. And anyway, so I was picked to be on this decathlon team. So me and my buddies went up to this place in the north. And now the Americans occupy a place called South Camp, and that is at Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. And we were going to another place which is occupied by the rest of the UN force, Colombians, Fijians, Belgians, et cetera, et cetera. So we went up there, and we were going to kick the you-know-what out of these other people in this competition. And when we arrived, I was just kind of, we're just kind of getting our legs and feeling our way around. I ran into these Fijian guys. And I don't know if you know anything about Fijians, but they're like Samoans. They're big guys, right? And they're all part of tribes, and so they're there with their cousins and their brothers and their second cousins and brothers-in-law, and whatever. So I run into this group of like 10 of them, and they're sitting drinking. It's like 3:00 in the afternoon. I'm going, you guys are drinking already? Wow. And so I sat down with them. I taught them how to play the beer hunter. The beer hunter, that's where you take a 6-pack of beer and you shake one up, you put it back in the 6-pack, and then you have to open it. And they just thought that was the funniest thing that they ever. So anyway, they had like 4 6-packs going around at the same time. And they said, we had like a UFO, a saucer came down last night. And so they start telling me this story that sometime during the night, I think it was about 9:00. And let me back up by saying that we are in a circular, both camps are a circular perimeter. They've got this really tall, maybe 12-foot, 15-foot high fence around them with the barbed wire. And then there's guard towers. And then guys like me sit in the guard towers with machine guns. And yada, yada, watch the desert. So what happened the night before was that a UFO, according to these guys, came down and sat right outside one of these guard towers. And the whole camp, they called in on the radio, you got something out here, and the whole camp went on alert. And these guys said, we were in our underwear and we are running for our positions and we've got our machine guns and we're ready to go. And everybody's screaming, don't shoot at it. Don't shoot at it. And so according to these Fijians, it sat there for, I don't know, like maybe 10 minutes. They had enough time to get out in their holes and watch it. And then it just slowly started moving off. And people were freaked out about it. Now, people would say, "Oh, well, you know what? What happened?" And really, well, the fact is that there's proof of this, and there's proof written up in a UN document, which I actually have right here a copy of. And if you don't mind, if I can put on my glasses here, I will read you a little bit of the account. And it's not that long. But if you don't mind, Jason, I would.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I will read you about. Okay. So this article is called Lights in the Sky. If you're watching on, Jason's going to send me this podcast. So if I'll send him these pictures, I don't know if you're going to edit, Jason, but I'll be able to put these on my YouTube video. So if you want to see this, you can watch on Encounters USA, or if Jason puts it up, watch on his. All right. So the story is Lights in the Sky, and this is published in a magazine, and it's called The Sandpaper. It is the magazine of the Multinational Force and Observers, and that is the UN contingent in the Sinai Desert. So here we go. Lights in the Sky. El Gora, as we all know, was built upon the remains of an Israeli airfield, but how many people know the ancient history of El Gora? Few, perhaps, because of the sensitive nature of this area. Unfortunately, the true stories of some of the unusual occurrences that have taken place in the area are seldom heard. However, on Sunday, 3rd March, several members of the Colombian Battalion saw evidence of the ancient links the area has with an ancient civilization. At 21:05 hours, that's 9:05 to you and me, as the guard settled down for another quiet night in the watchtowers, the sentries along the southern fence became aware of a quiet humming in the air. At first, they paid little attention to it, but after it had been growing steadily louder for 10 minutes, they noticed a series of orange lights hovering beyond the southern fence. The sound was too quiet to be helicopters and the lights too close together for aircraft. The lights were grouped together in the groups of 6, a total of 3 groups in all. They always moved in an east to west direction for 2 minutes before returning, always moving at the same pace, but occasionally disappearing behind the sand dunes out in the desert. After the lights had been visible for some 10 to 15 minutes, they suddenly disappeared from sight. One moment they were hovering above about 2 miles from the camp, and the next moment they were rising rapidly, moving faster and faster, straight up into the sky. Within a matter of seconds, they were lost to sight among the stars. So it goes on, but basically that's the story of the encounter. And these Fijian guys, I mean, as I said, these are pretty big guys or tribal guys, and they were really freaked out by it. And they just didn't want it to come back. So
yeah. Did they have any theories about what it wanted or what it was?
No, they just didn't want it to come back. They were scared. So
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty. I mean, you always hear these stories about like these ships or whatever they are being kind of curious about military installations. You know, It seems like there's a lot of stories about them kind of being off in the distance, like observing or doing who knows what, right?
Right. Well, you make a very interesting point, because in the time that I was there, I mean, we did a lot of patrols in the desert. I never saw anything like that, but they really allude to the fact that particular area has a history of UFOs, and it alludes also to, I didn't see them, but they say in that article that there are like the Nazca lines in the Sinai. So yeah, so when you get into, the Exodus and Genesis and I've actually, Jason, written a book called Deceptions of the Ages, and I talk about the extraterrestrial factor in the Bible. And when you talk about, Moses getting the 10 Commandments and leaving Egypt, I mean, those would all be classified as UFO encounters today. So anyway, but that particular area that we were in, I guess it has some kind of significance. So
Yeah, I mean, it goes to that point of that people have been having these kind of strange encounters since we started recording things. As soon as we started writing things down, people started saying, oh yeah, this weird thing happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Like, it just keeps on happening. Yeah, it's very interesting to wonder. Also, there's that idea of like, do we project things onto these UFOs? I suppose it's also your understanding, like a primitive person might think maybe that they're fairies or some kind of magical being, but we think of them maybe as more technological. It'd be very interesting to get the actual answer, of course.
Yeah. And then another question is, I don't know what they have at North Camp, but secretly, I mean, people talk. We had a lot of very sophisticated weaponry in our camp that I know they didn't have in North Camp. And you would think that they would have probably been more interested in us, but maybe they knew we were probably going to use it on them. So they kept it safe and stayed with somebody that were not Americans. So.
Do you have any personal theories about what they were doing out there?
I think they were just taking a look. I really don't know, and I get headaches just trying to imagine. But I think they're just kind of taking a look at what's going on there, and who knows what they do and why they do it. That's what we're trying to figure out on Encounters USA.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you were talking about a ranch, I believe.
Yeah. So let's we can go ahead and skip to down to ECETI Ranch. I want to get rid of this. I got something in my face here. It's driving me crazy. Okay. So let me back up a little bit. I had heard, probably people that are listening to this are going, are you crazy? How could you not know about ECETI Ranch? But you've heard of it, right, Jason?
I only heard about it because of your DM. I Googled it and I started watching. I think they have a YouTube channel,
okay.
And I was quite surprised that I had not heard about this because it's practically in my backyard.
Exactly. I grew up in Squam. I've been interested in UFOs and stuff all my life, and I had never heard of Mount Adams. I'd never heard of what's been going on at Hanford or Yakima or any of that stuff, or I would have been down there a long time ago. Also, let me say that I was over teaching in the Middle East from 2001 to 2013 while a lot of this was going on. So I have an alibi. But ECETI Ranch is down on the south side of Mount Adams. It's right across from Hood. What is it on? Anyway, it's right across from Oregon, the Oregon border. And I want to say the Hood River, but I'm probably wrong. I want to say it's the Columbia. But anyway, it's down right south of Mount Adams. And when I heard about it, it was, okay, I'm going there. And the reason I heard about it was because I was doing a story on the UFO encounters down in Tacoma. And right now, for some reason, the island, Maury Island, the Maury Island encounter. So I was doing a story and I'm looking on the internet and there's these guys called the UFO I team. And the head of the UFO I team, or one of the heads, is Michael Hall, who is a former Thurston County Supreme Court or Thurston County Justice, right? So he's a judge and he's head of the UFO I team. And I said, I'd like to talk to you about Maury Island. And he said, well, I'm at ECETI Ranch. I said, what's ECETI Ranch? Well, we're going to videotape UFOs. Well, I'll be down there. I'll see you there. So that was pretty much how I heard about ECETI Ranch, and that's how I ran into the UFO I team. Now, before I tell you about what we saw down there, let me explain about the UFO I-Team. These guys, not only do you have this former Supreme Court justice or whatever he was in Thurston County, you also have these amazing engineers. They are all, Jason, I think you've gone blur. There you are.
There we go.
You've got engineers. I don't know where they work, but they they use like nom de guerre. They won't use their real names because they don't want to jeopardize their positions. But these guys are top of the line engineers. And I don't know exactly what all these people do, but they come out with this gadgetry that is just, some of it I've never even heard of before. So I went down there, and these guys have this whole array set up of cameras, infrared detectors, cell phones, etc. And they're getting ready to videotape these UFOs. And I'm skeptical, as I told you. These things avoid me like the plague. I've never, seen anything, and I've never even come close to seeing anything that I would say, oh yeah, that was a UFO. But these guys got set up, and when the lights went out, then the show began. And I will say, okay, so first of all, let me say that there's a lot of traffic. There are satellites going by, space stations going by, yada, yada. So these guys have these whatever apps that they can tell where, that's the space station and that's this satellite, et cetera, et cetera. But there were a few of them where they were not there. And some of these were these pretty large balls of light. And no aircraft I've ever heard of is just a large ball of light. And so I would say that night, we watched from maybe 10 o'clock to maybe 1:30. And it gets freezing cold down there. Let me remind everybody. So be careful about that. But 5 things that I just couldn't even begin to say that were aircraft. And people said, that's not the space station. It's not this, it's not that. And they were so big that that they were not any aircraft that I'm aware of. So whatever those things were, James Gilliland, who owns the ranch, has this idea of what they are. Other people have these ideas of what they are. All I know is they were really strange balls of light. So I was able to interview Michael Hall and the UFO I-Team. And so they gave me the lowdown on what they do, and actually invited me to a couple of their investigations and kind of adopted me like a wayward podcaster. And so that was very nice. But the best thing that happened, I hope I didn't just pop my mic. The best thing that happened was the next night we went up to Mount Adams, and there's a place called Lake Takalaka or something. And so they set up their equipment outside of that based on or facing Mount Adams. And right before the sun was down, there was this chandelier. I don't even know how to describe it. It really looked like a round carousel like chandelier. And it just very slowly descended right behind Mount Adams. And so anybody on the Yakima side would have been able to see it. All the people in the campground that were around us, they saw it. And I don't know what that was, but that really looked like a halo, a bunch of lights together, just kind of slowly descending down into Mount Adams. And the guys that are involved in these investigations, one is Lee Strauss, another one is Anders. I can't remember what his last name is. These are not the real names, so it doesn't matter anyway. But they seem to be convinced, and I haven't been able to interview them yet, but they seem to be convinced that they have found a portal at Mount Adams. So I've done investigations down at Mount Shasta, and I've talked to people that say they've seen UFOs going in and out of that mountain. So Mount Adams, who knows? But there is so much weird stuff going on down there. And then, as I was saying earlier, I interviewed a couple, And this guy grew up down around Hanford. His friends and relatives work at Hanford, and there is just no end of UFO activity there. So I don't know what's bringing him in, but they're definitely there. And if you want to see UFOs, I don't know how it's fairly easy to get for me to get reservations there. So you just go to ecetiranch.com or .org or whatever, or actually it's ECETI. I think it's eceti.org. And just, you can book a tent thing, book a yurt, whatever. But anyway, so, and I'm not guaranteeing, because you have to be careful of the cloud cover, et cetera. But I saw something down there. I don't know what it was. So there's my ECETI Ranch, Jason.
Yeah. And, for people so we're both kind of in the Washington State area, Pacific Northwest, I believe. For people outside of this area, Hanford, Washington was part of the bomb program back in World War II. And it's considered by a lot of people like one of the most polluted by toxic waste possibly in the world. So they had tons of secret stuff. There's tons of vats of horrible radioactive garbage basically there. So you could definitely see why people from somewhere else might be a little concerned about this place possibly. And you said that the chandelier type ship, did you see actually go into the mountain, or did it go like behind the mountain?
No, it dropped right down behind this like on the side of it, and just dropped right down. So just amazing. And it was so beautiful.
And so for the people that say that they think there's a portal there, do they believe the portal is like in a specific location, or is it kind of the mountain itself? Do you know?
I don't know. I think that people that think about portals think it's a specific location.
Okay.
People are you into remote viewing at all?
I know about it. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay. So I've seen people that have remote viewed Mount Shasta, and they say that there is nothing there now, but at one point before it was like a base, that there was a lot of activity there, but there doesn't seem to be, he couldn't find any activity there now. Since we threw remote viewing in there, we're going to have to open that Pandora box just a little bit. I use remote viewing because it seems fairly credible based on the fact that the CIA was using them, the Army was using them, and their data does seem to be confirmed with more information that we seem to be getting. And so I did a podcast. You know Carrie Cassidy of Project Camelot? Oh,
no. I maybe a little familiarity, but I can't say for sure.
Okay. Well, I just did a podcast with her and a remote viewer this is a remote viewer, Dr. Simeon Hines, and no relation, but also from Wazoo. Let's say this. As a person with a professional background like Dr. Hines seems to have a hard time with remote viewers, and he's been doing a remote viewing for 25 years, and he won't say anything about something that has not been confirmed, right? So we're doing our interview, and I say, well, what about Joe Mcmonagle? Because in the whole point of the podcast is what is on Mars? Who is on Mars? The Israelis just said Americans are working with aliens on Mars, and this is the head of the Israeli space program. And other people have said Americans are working on Mars, and you go, well, yeah, but these people are kind of nutcases. But when the head of the Israeli space program comes out and says, no, the Americans are working with aliens on Mars, well, why is that guy not in a loony bin? And or is there something to what he's saying? So the point of the whole podcast is let's use these remote viewers, because the government's not going to tell us, but the government used remote viewers, and now those remote viewers are on the loose, and they've remote viewed the universe. And so one example, and Dr. Hines is saying, oh, well, remote viewing the solar system, there's just no evidence, which is not true. And here's one example, and I'll give you another one also. But Ingo Swann, who was the premier remote viewer for the Army for a long time. And to tell you where Ingo Swann came from, or how he got his start, he was in the Army. He walked into a room of computers in Europe and shut them all down with his mind. And if you've seen that movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats, that general pulled him in. He said, "Young man, did you shut off my computers?" He said, "I sure did." He said, "That is fantastic. Can you do it again?" So, and then it was, okay, well, what can this guy do with his mind? So, so this guy, they tasked him to remote view Jupiter. And he said, "Well, okay, so I'm out there and there's a ring. There's a ring around Jupiter." No, you're on Saturn. He said, "No, this is Jupiter, but it's a very faint ring. It's very far away." And they said, "Well, okay," so they chalked that up to he got that wrong. He remote viewed Saturn until they sent the probe out and found the ring, right? And then another instance is, and this is why I wanted to bring the show together to find out what's on Mars, is because Joe Mcmonagle, have you heard of him?
It sounds familiar.
He's another military remote viewer. In fact, he's probably the best. Well, Ingo Swann was the best, and then Joe Mcmonagle, Ed Dames, those guys would all say, "Well, no, I'm the best." But Joe Mcmonagle was tasked to remote view Mars. And I just want to preface this by saying, when these people are tasked to interview these things or to view these things, they don't know what they're looking at. They're given a coordinate, they're giving something, but they have no idea where it is, when it is, how it is. They're just told, "This is the target. Tell me what you see." And so he saw a pyramid, and it was built next to a crater, a meteor crater, whatever. And so they said, "This crater is like a mile high. It's huge. It's way bigger than our pyramids." And so his handler said, "Well, go back to when the pyramid was built." So Joe Mcmonagle went back 1,000,000 years, and there was a civilization on Mars, but it was just towards the end of its existence, because according to what Joe Mcmonagle, he asked this alien, he said, what are you doing? He said, "Well, we're hibernating. We're waiting for somebody to come back." And so this opens up this whole thing of, and this is the point of my last podcast, was, did they go to Antarctica? Did they build a civilization there? And why do the descriptions that Joe Mcmonagle describes these people on Mars are the same people that they found supposedly in Antarctica? Very tall, very thin, very smart. But they match the same. So as I said in the very beginning on Encounters USA, we look for the crazy stories and we see what matches. And, what is the coincidence or whatever, where tall people on Mars 1,000,000 years ago, and then tall people found supposedly in a flash frozen civilization in Antarctica. So that's on Encounters USA. That's why we use remote viewers, because the government's not going to tell us the truth. We have testimony, but the government relied on remote viewers. So I think we can rely on them.
I know there's people that kind of offer training for remote viewing. Have you tried doing it yourself at all?
No, and I never would. And the reason that I wouldn't is this, is the world is like, you want to stay on, I don't know, I love the scientific method. I love verifiable stuff. And when you start talking about things that you can't verify, like UFOs, Bigfoot, whatever, those things are verifiable because there's physical evidence of them. So that's one thing. But I have this Dr. Simeon Hines, who teaches remote viewing and has for 25 years. And has the same opinion I have. If you can't verify it, what good is it? Right? And so I don't do it because, so let's say I'm really good at it, right? And then there's something that really, then, oh, I can remote view and I'm a great remote viewer. But then there's something that really matters. Maybe I need to win the lottery or something. But then it doesn't work. So for me, I'm good with my own abilities, and I don't really. I don't really have an interest in doing that. If somebody was ever to say, "Well, why don't you sit down and try it, and we'll show you how to do it," just as like a parlor trick or something, I do it. But I wouldn't do it because I don't think I have those skills, and I don't think I'd base anything on what I ever remote viewed.
Earlier you talked about not really having that many experiences yourself, as if they avoid you. I've noticed that some people have that. Like, I feel like I have that too, where I've never experienced anything. If anything, they're avoiding me. But other people, like, they seem to be attracted to. Do you have any personal theories about why there's some people that are kind of repel them, and other people kind of attract these strange things?
I have a very crazy theory. And you want me to say it, don't you?
Okay. Yeah.
You want me to put my neck on the chopping block?
If you're willing, you don't have to.
Well, I think I really hate to even say it. I have an idea that, and this is going to really sound crazy. So if I have a rabbit hole there, you might want to hop into it. I grew up a Mormon, Latter-day Saint, right? And I think that because we're given a blessing when we're first born, and that we're baptized, and that I believe that we are protected from those things. And I'm not going to go too far into it, but I wrote a book called Deceptions of the Ages, another plug for my book. But the Mormons, or Latter-day Saints, are the only really Christian religion that has always, what should I say, accepted the idea of UFOs, aliens, etc. Because in our scriptures it says, "Worlds without number have I created him in the name of his only begotten." So, of my only begotten. So I don't want to get into a big Christian thing here, but Latter-day Saints do believe there are many worlds, many thousands, worlds without number. And why wouldn't those people be coming here? So in my book, I cite very quickly the fact that Joseph Smith, who was responsible for, if you're a Mormon, translating the Book of Mormon, his idea, and he told a guy that later left the church, that there are like good extraterrestrials and there are bad extraterrestrials. And there is the idea of Freemasonry exists all throughout and not that Latter-day Saints are Freemasons, but he seemed to think that the idea of Freemasonry and its relationships, it's what it does, not a Freemason, so I don't know, but that is prevalent throughout the universe. And that there are handshakes and all these things are not only for people on the earth, but these are when you meet another being, you can tell, is he part of the club, or is he or she not part of the club? And so going back to your question, why don't these things appear to some people? I think that people who are Latter-day Saints, I don't think they have. I've never actually heard of anybody that's even had an abduction experience, and I've been looking very hard to find somebody that has. So that's my crazy theory.
It's fascinating. Yeah, it's very fascinating. Do you have any plans of returning to the ranch?
Yeah. Actually, we are trying to put a joint project together. I've got Jody Cook of the North American Dogman Project. I have Todd Neese, who is American Primate Conservancy, and I've got the UFO I team. And we were going to do it last summer, but the COVID thing. So we're looking the first break we can get. We're going to try to get down there and get some good weather but what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically occupy like a whole grid square on a map with equipment and people. And because Bigfoot is down there, aliens are down there, and who knows, maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe we'll see a dog man, but we want to just put a project together, go down there and see what shows up. So I want to get remote viewers involved. I'd like to get Stephen Greer and have him do his fifth dimension contact thing and try to bring us in some aliens. But that's our next project for the East City Ranch.
Sounds very exciting. There's one more thing that we hope to do once, this whole COVID thing's over.
Yeah, right. Like it's ever going to be over. But Jason, you're welcome. If you want to, I'll keep in touch.
Yeah.
And you can come too. It'll be a hoot.
Yeah.
These are really fun guys. Fun guys.
Yeah. I'm very excited to learn more about this place because, like I said, it's just right in my backyard. Like I hear about things very, very far away. And I'm like, well, I'm never going to see that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought. When I went down there, I said, I'm never going to see anything. But the lights went down and the party started. And so anyway, I'm not guaranteeing anything though, but.
Yeah. But it is a hot spot. There's certain places on Earth that seem to be just more likely.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, I saw like 5 that I just said, I don't know what those are. If I had seen one, that really just made it the whole trip worth it. So.
Yeah. My goodness. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Where can people find your show again?
Well, we are at encountersusa.com, and we have a YouTube channel, the Encounters USA, and a podcast, Encounters USA. So if you are wanting to tell a story and you'd like another venue, then we'd love to hear it on Encounters USA too. So, but Jason, thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'm surprised you remembered me from last summer, but that's reassuring.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully the voters will next year or next election. Yeah.
So thank you once again for your time. I really appreciate it. Well, that's it. This is the end of the 5th episode. I hope you liked these audio programs. I hope you found our time together to be entertaining and maybe a bit enlightening. I hope to talk to you soon. If you want to hear more, please visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/podofmystery. All I need is one supporter and I'll start working on future episodes. And if you don't have any extra cash, how about just sending me some good vibes? Some positive psychic energy, maybe a prayer wishing me well, or a brief meditation of gratitude. We've probably spent some good time together, so why not send some happy thoughts my way? I hope to talk to you again soon. This has been the Podcast of Mystery, and I am Jason Rigdon.